Hello everyone, and welcome to another mini lecture. Okay, we're going to cover common types of studies, level of evidence, and bias. So a couple of the study types, we're going to go in order here, and this is in your book too, so you can always reference that. So the gold standard of all research studies is a randomized controlled trial. So this is obviously an experiment where you have participants randomized into two different groups. Each group receives a different intervention and you test the effects. There's a cohort study, which is an observational study, usually longitudinal, so it's over time, and patients are followed. So the cohort is usually patients with a certain set of characteristics. Case control is also an observational study. This is a group of people who have already experienced an outcome, like type 2 diabetes, and they are matched with people who are very similar in characteristics. So maybe they're both adults ages 35 to 50, but the other group does not have the outcome. There's cross-sectional, which is you take a point in time and sample a population to see who has the outcome. And there's qualitative. So I've done a lot of qualitative work. So this is like interviews, focus groups, observation. People tend to think of qualitative as more of the word one. So you're gathering words typically and analyzing that instead of maybe numbers. Case series is a group of patients who are exposed to a factor, such as an intervention, but they do not provide definitive evidence. This could be like maybe a therapist sees 5 different patients with a certain condition and writes about those patients and the condition, but it doesn't mean that it's like hard evidence. Moving on to the levels of evidence. So level 1 being the highest, the best kinds of evidence. This would be a systematic review of level 2 studies, is number 1. The next would be a randomized control trial. The third would be a pseudo-randomized control trial. So it's the same as the randomized control trial, but not true randomization. Level 3, part 2 would be a comparative study with concurrent cohorts. So a cohort study, case control study. Level 3, part 3 is a comparative study without controls. And then level 5 would be case series. Now, every book and every person who teaches evidence-based practice will have a little bit different levels, and it also depends on what type of research you're looking at, what type of area you're looking at, but I've seen the levels done very differently depending on who you ask or what research you're looking at. So know that this isn't like set in stone, but it gives you a good idea of kind of how that matrix works. So bias. Bias happens in every research study, whether it's inherent or not. It's something that's discussed usually in the limitation section of articles. So let's discuss a few types. So the first type, selection or sampling bias. So this means that there is a difference between those people who are selected to be in a study and those who are not. Therefore, it's not really generalizable if this occurs. So to prevent it, make sure you have really good sampling. The people participating should represent the population that you want to generalize those results to. What to look for in an article, look for how the sampling was done, look at the data, and see if it compares with the population characteristics. If a study is done and they look at, let's say 30 women or 30 people between the ages of 35 and 50 and like 90% are women, is it really generalizable to men? Probably not. So those types of things. The attrition bias is when participants withdraw. Those people who withdraw can be very different from those who remain in a study. And so you want to minimize loss for this and analyze the results by intention to treat. This will get rid of some of that bias. You want to reject articles with a loss to follow-up of greater than 15% and look at their results and see if they analyze by intention to treat. And we'll cover that more later. The next is a type of measurement bias in experimental studies. So errors in measuring or exposure can lead to differences. To prevent this, you can blind participants or the health professionals, researchers, and look if the study used methods to reduce participants and their awareness of the group. So blinding, again, can help with this one, as with a lot of bias. The placebo effect, I'm sure most of you know what this is. So it's basically somebody, let's say, taking a pill or doing an intervention, and they believe that it works, and so to some extent it does. So to prevent this, you can have a control group of participants that receive approximately the same intervention. So don't raise expectations higher than they should be, and then also blinding helps. So in summary of Chapter 2, we can answer questions about frequency, diagnosis, prognosis, and the effects of intervention using evidence-based practice. We convert information or problems into answerable questions, and this first step is using the PICO question. There are many types of studies. With each type of study, there's a different level of hierarchy or evidence. The higher up a study is, the more likely that bias is limited. And being able to recognize whether bias has occurred in a study is a crucial part of this process. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you soon.